Namaste, and what's up, guys? Welcome to Mystery Vault. So without wasting any time, let's jump right in. This whole thing starts with a warning that says, no minors allowed past this point. Pretty soon we find out that we're inside the Jimmy's hangout spot, a group of teenagers who blindly follow their leader, Jimmy Crystal. The Jimmys surround a small kid named Spike. They humiliate him, laugh at him, put him down, attack him, call him names, and make him the victim of cruel bullying. But then a sharp voice shuts them all up. It's the group's leader, Jimmy Crystal, reminding them that what's about to happen is no game. This is a fight to the death with no mercy or compassion. Then Jimmy Crystal starts praying to his father, whom he calls the Dark Lord himself, Satan. In a serious voice, he tells them to look at this boy and decide if he's worthy of proving his value or not. All the Jimmys bow their heads in respect to the Dark Lord, also called Old Nick, whom they believe is Jimmy Crystal's father, and the living form of the devil. This way, little Spike is forced to fight one of the Jimmys. The guy is bigger and stronger, so he beats him badly and injures him seriously. Then, laughing at him, he says this was all just a game, mocks him, and walks away. In that moment, the kid takes advantage of his mistake and stabs the knife into his leg. One girl from the group tries to help the injured boy, but another, Jimmy stops her, reminding her that the rules say no one can intervene. In the end, the kid wins because by luck or fate, the blade hits the attacker's artery and he bleeds out and dies right in front of everyone's shocked faces. Spike is left completely traumatized, unable to understand the gravity of what he's just done. After the fight, the boy says his name is Spike, but the Jimmy's leader tells him that name is no longer his, and from now on, his new name is Jimmy. Then he removes the dead Jimmy's wig, revealing a cross-shaped scar underneath. After that, they all leave the place with one boy who walks quietly still in shock. Meanwhile, in a dark and silent forest, we see a man slowly walking and picking fruit. Suddenly, a large group of infected comes out from between the trees and starts chasing him. The biggest and strongest one, the alpha of the infected, catches him, hits him hard, and throws him to the ground. Then, grabbing his head, he kills him with brutal strength, celebrating with the others like it's some glorious victory. At the same time, we see Dr. Ian Kelson dragging out a pregnant woman who was infected from the shelter and taking her body far away. Meanwhile, Samson, the infected we saw hunting earlier, is feeding on the remains of his victim. In the middle of that wild moment, he hears Dr. Ian's voice softly singing as he carries the woman's body. Curious, Samson starts following him from a distance, watching carefully and quietly. The doctor realizes he's there and prepares for an attack. But instead of running, he uses a special device that injects morphine into the infected, leaving him helpless. Then he starts talking to him and says his name is Samson. He explains he gave him that name because of his huge size, insane strength, his hair, and because he saw him becoming the new alpha while hunting in the forest. Dr. Kelson adds that Samson owes him a favor because he made him feel good with that substance. But right after he laughs and says he was joking, in reality, he doesn't owe anything. After that strange encounter, the doctor packs up his stuff and goes home. He goes down to his basement, lights all the candles, puts on music, and starts dancing slowly. Then he takes off his clothes and sits there looking at old family photos, drowning himself in nostalgia and loneliness. Hours pass, and later, we see him back in the forest waiting for Samson. Again, he prepares his sedative weapon and takes position to shoot. When Samson arrives, the doctor says he has the thing, he wants the weapon that can calm him down. But he also warns that if he kills him and takes his head, he'll never get that thing again. Since Samson approaches calmly without looking as terrifying as before, the doctor shoots the sedative. Then the doctor talks to Samson and asks if he understands any of what he's saying, or at least realizes that he's not a threat and doesn't want to hurt him. He says how amazing it would be if he just said one word. It would almost be a miracle to know that the infection only clouds the mind and doesn't completely replace it. And maybe he still has memories or traces left of who he was before. Maybe the doctor thinks Samson just wants peace, a break, a moment to breathe. The doctor also says there's nothing wrong with having peace or taking a rest, trusting that idea. He injects himself with the sedative and falls asleep next to Samson. Hours pass, and when the doctor wakes up, he's shocked to see he's still alive and unharmed. But Samson is gone. Happy Dr. Ian Kelson goes back to the basement and makes more sedatives. While working, Samson arrives bringing deer heads like an offering. From that moment, Samson starts visiting often to get sedatives. They sit together, spend time, dance, and even let the rain fall on them. Samson, amazed, feels the drops on his hands, moves them in wonder, and fills Dr. Kelson with joy. Somewhere else, we're shown a tree covered in skulls like a dark monument. Later in the forest, 3 people decide to explore the area and split up to move faster. While picking fruit from trees, they spot an infected and hide. But the biggest one, named Yonu, isn't afraid. He says if they're spotted, he'll yell to distract them so the others can escape. The others run away and Yonu stays behind to face them. But the infected hear him run toward him and he gets killed. When the survivors return home, they tell George, who they live with, the bad news. They lost Yonu. George replies that they're not the only ones with news because visitors have arrived. The Jimmies are here. The newcomers eat like they're starving, while the hosts stay quiet, not knowing what to say. The girl asks why they're there. Jimmy Crystal says they were welcomed with open hearts, fed, and treated well. Their hunger and hearts are full. She asks again when they're leaving, but Jimmy Crystal coldly says they're not leaving, they're staying, and they'll kill them. The girl panics and runs outside, and that's when we find out she's pregnant. After that, Jimmy Crystal sends one of his followers, Jimmy Inc., to find other places where they can settle. On the way, she runs into the man we saw earlier, now infected. But nothing happens to her because she attacks first and escapes. Meanwhile, the doctor and Samson continue enjoying time together. And Samson slowly starts feeling the world again, like something is waking up inside. But Jimmy Incorporated, while searching for a new home for the group, spots them from afar. Back at the barn, the Jimmies and the family stay inside, waiting in silence. Jimmy Crystal starts telling his story. He says, Old Nick saw that humanity had failed and there was no salvation left. So Old Nick released the demons, the infected, and God did nothing because he was invisible. This way, the world of men became Old Nick's land, and his kingdom turned into hell. Then Old Nick spoke to his favorite son, whose name was Jimmy Crystal, and said he would be his right hand, and he would have 7 fingers, each finger a claw. So only he would be his heir, and those 7 fingers would hold his crown. Jimmy Crystal calls himself Old Nick's favorite son, and says he travels the land searching for souls for his father, giving people charity. In the end, he reveals that his 7 fingers are the Jimmies. Then Jimmy Crystal steps forward and with a twisted smile announces that the act of charity will be taking shirts. His words fall like a sentence. Immediately, they go after them without mercy. People scream and watch in terror. The boy watching can't take it. His stomach turns. He runs outside and vomits in the hallway, shaking. Right at that moment, Jimmy Inc. arrives. She just found a new place and came back. She looks at him coldly and says, "Stay there, take deep breaths, and calm down, because this is just the beginning." Back with Samson, we find him at the Tower of Skulls, surrounded by bones, whitened by time, standing next to the doctor. The wind whistles through the remains like old voices. The doctor seriously says they need to talk. He admits that the medicine he's giving is not just one thing, but a mix of many substances. But the strongest is morphine. But there's a problem. The dose he's using only has 2 weeks left, and in the last 28 years, walking more than 120,000 kilometers, he's searched but didn't find a single drop. So the strange peace he found is about to end. Still, he says he can offer something else, a different kind of peace, a home next to him. The kind of peace that doesn't depend on bottles or needles. He admits that's why they became friends. And in a low, trembling voice, he says if Samson consents even with the smallest sign, he'll help him rest forever. He talks about it like an act of love. And in that moment, a miracle happens. Samson slowly opens his mouth like he's remembering how to speak and says just one word. Moon. The doctor freezes. His eyes fill with tears. That one word is worth more than all the years of his search. Meanwhile, Jimmy Crystal gathers his people and points to Tom, the boy who went into the forest with the pregnant girl. He says he needs strong fingers worthy of holding Old Nick's crown. He orders Tom to choose a Jimmy to fight. If he wins, he'll take the spot and be called Jimmy. If he loses, he'll get charity. And if he refuses, also charity. Tom accepts knowing there's no way out and chooses Jimmy Ma. Jimmy Crystal raises his arms and prays in the name of the Dark Father. The fight starts, but Tom's strength is gone. His punches are slow and weak. Jimmy Ma hits without mercy, knocks him down, humiliates him. When he's about to finish him, he stops, gives a cruel smile, and asks Jimmy Crystal for permission to proceed. Right then, a shadow jumps from behind. It's the pregnant girl who saw everything. With a scream of anger and despair, she lunges at Jimmy Ma and kills him, stopping the horror, even knowing that by doing so, she signed her own death. But they spot her, and now everyone goes after her. Chaos breaks out. Tom, still injured and barely standing, drags himself to a gas tank, and with his last strength, lights it. The fire explosion engulfs several Jimmys. Screams fill the air. This way, Tom injures Jimmy Crystal's fingers, his loyal followers marking them with fire and pain. Spike and Jimmy Incorporated were outside when they hear the screams. They run and see the Jimmys running like burning shadows. One falls to the ground and dies in the flames. Meanwhile, the pregnant girl escapes. The boy sees her running and the leader orders him go after her. Spike runs and catches up to her. She begs him to take her with him, says she doesn't want to stay in that cursed place, but terrified, she pushes him away and keeps running without looking back. Spike stays there watching her disappear into the trees, then lowers his head and walks back. Jimmy Crystal explodes in anger when he sees Spike let the woman escape. His voice thunders as he says he'll call Old Nick to ask about the boy, but Jimmy Incorporated steps in. She reminds him that they can't call Old Nick whenever they want. He comes when he feels like it. She says she's seen him, his skin was red. He was old and standing by the pillar of skulls. At his feet, the alpha on his knees, like a lamb before the master. So, she says, let Old Nick decide the boy's fate. Meanwhile, the doctor continues his research, reading books, checking old notes, but suddenly realizes it's daytime. Alarmed, he goes out to look for Samson. At the same time, the Jimmys are following him, watching from afar. Jimmy Crystal realizes there really is such an old man. And even though he knows he's been lying all this time and Old Nick doesn't exist, he wants to keep his loyal followers. So he says Old Nick is there. They ask if they should go meet him, see what he is. But Jimmy Crystal says first he needs to talk alone. Orders them, don't move. Then Jim Crystal walks forward, alone step by step, until he's standing in front of the big tower of skulls where the silence feels like a curse, and every bone seems to whisper stories of death. Jimmy slowly walks toward Dr. Kelson, eyes full of fear and hope. Looks at him like he's standing before something holy and terrifying. In a trembling voice, he asks, "Are you Old Nick?" The doctor looks at him tired and with deep sadness and says no, that he's no god, no demon. Explains if Old Nick means Satan, then he's wrong. He's just a man, nothing more. Points to the Tower of Skulls and says, this isn't an altar. It's a monument to the dead. A clumsy way to remember those no one ever cried for. Explains his skin is like that because he applies iodine every day to kill the virus that's the cause of the infection. Then says something that shakes him. The infection didn't come from hell. It came from science, from human hands that tried to play God and failed. After that, the doctor realizes that Jimmy Crystal doesn't just believe in the devil. He lives for him. But when Jimmy talks about his father, his voice breaks. Admits he's never actually seen him. Just sometimes hears whispers in his head. That voice guides him, pushes him, tells him what to do, and it scares him, even if he won't admit it. From afar, Spike, the boy, talks to Jimmy Incorporated. His innocence broken, he says maybe Old Nick is just a weird, lonely old man and they should leave him alone. Jimmy Incorporated wants to believe it's not true. But inside, some doubt starts. Remembers when Jimmy Crystal looked through binoculars, he never said he saw the father. Just said he felt him. And for the first time, thinks that everything she's followed might be one big lie. Meanwhile, Jimmy Crystal continues talking to the doctor. Tells him when it all started, he lived near a church when the infected came like a dark tide. Says his father walked among them, guiding the lost sheep, and repeated one line he never forgot. Charity is home. That's the last time he says he saw him. Then lowers his head and admits his fear. The followers think the doctor is Old Nick. If he says he's not, he'll lose them. And if he loses them, they'll kill him. His voice doesn't sound prophetic anymore. It sounds like a trapped man. The doctor tells him he's trapped, can't speak the truth without destroying everything he's built. So he offers a deal. Pretend to be Old Nick, or I'll kill you. Jimmy Crystal leans toward the doctor with a smile that promises nothing good and walks away. After that, he tells the Jimmys next day, Old Nick will show himself. No one gets close. No one touches because the one who does will burn in flames. Only he, the chosen son, can stand beside the father. It doesn't sound like a warning. It sounds like a sentence. Later, the doctor sits in front of Samson. The wind moves the skulls like whispering. The doctor speaks in a broken voice, admits he was scared by Jimmy Crystal's threat. For the first time, thought of death not as an idea, but as something close. Thought of Samson alone lost without anyone to say his name. So he says he'll do something different. Try the impossible. Explains he's studied the infection for years. Brutal strength, empty eyes, faded away tongue. But there's something darker. Admits there's a wound in the mind. Seen infected kill children and babies for no reason. Meaning they see things that aren't real. The doctor would call it psychosis. And if it's psychosis, it can be treated. Not sure but wants to try because Samson isn't just a monster. He's the one who said moon. And that changes everything. Gives him pills he made himself. Asks him to trust. Not as infected, not as patient, but as a friend. In the morning, Spike moves like a shadow between the trees. Wants to run away. Life away from the group. But suddenly, an infected appears in front of him. Spike doesn't run. Fear, anger, desperation, he fights everything and wins. Kills it. Then, a Jimmy arrives. Thinks Spike is trying to escape. Yells that in the joining test, Spike cut his best friend's leg and today he'll pay. Raises his weapon to kill. Spike closes his eyes and surrenders. But death doesn't come. What comes is Jimmy Inc., his only friend. She jumps on the Jimmy and without hesitation kills him. Then stands there, looking at Spike, still breathing hard, and slowly says, now she's his only friend, only company in this world where mercy is gone. Explains she's been everywhere, seen how people die from trusting, from separating from thinking they can make it alone. So she begs him never leave. Stay by her side, because outside there's only danger and no one reaches out to help. Then they walk together to Jimmy Crystal to tell what happened. They say one of his men tried to kill Jimmy Inc. and she only defended herself. But Jimmy Crystal looks coldly like he doesn't believe a word. Says it doesn't matter what they say. The truth will be decided that night in front of old Nick and no one can lie there. Later, the doctor goes looking for Samson. Calls with a tired voice the skull tower, the forest, empty roads. But Samson doesn't come. The truth is, Samson is far away, washing himself in a cold river. Then slowly, clumsily walks like he's learning to use his body again. Reaches an abandoned bus and sits inside among broken seats and windows without glass. Memories come back. Life before name voice when he was human. Tries to speak words slow and crooked but real. For a moment, he's himself again, but footsteps sound pulls him back. Infected arrive and surround him. Samson stands and fights, everything kills, throws back, beats them one by one. But there are too many and more keep coming. Meanwhile, the doctor with shaking hands looks at books. Mixes bottles, lights candles, searches for music. Knows that night will decide everything. Wants to use the Jimmy's fear against them, trick to save lives. Spends hours setting up his show, not sure if it will work, but knows it's better than doing nothing. When night comes, the Jimmys move like a dark procession with the Jimmy Crystal leading. They reach the skull tower and there the doctor arrives. He starts singing with a voice that doesn't sound like his body is lending itself to something bigger. Then plays with fire, moves it in the air, and everyone watches frozen in awe. He gives them drugs so they think they're seeing God. Even plays a record tied to Satan. Everything feels real intense. In the end, the doctor pretending to be old Nick rises before them and calls with a voice from another world. Says he is the Dark Lord, back to speak to them. And his son should have loyal fingers, the Jimmys who obey every word. Then looks at Spike and recognizes him. After that, announces the last request. The fingers must kill Jimmy Crystal like Jesus was sacrificed. Says that act will seal the faith. But Jimmy Crystal isn't stupid. Watches, listens, and suddenly smiles. Understands everything is fake. Steps forward, yells, "This man is no God, it's all lies." And before anyone can stop him, he stabs the doctor. Blood falls to the ground and the silence breaks. The Jimmys hesitate, look at each other. Then everything explodes. Some rebel, some scream, some attack. In the chaos, Jimmy Inc. makes her choice. She goes behind the other Jimmys one by one. Everyone except Spike. Eyes full of tears and rage, she goes to the injured doctor and says she'll do one last thing for him, carry out the final order. Then walks toward Jimmy Crystal and kills him. ending the man who led them down a road of blood and lies. After that, Spike still stands, not knowing what to feel. The girl arrives, takes his hand, and they walk away together. On the road, she finally tells him her real name. She's Kelly. They leave Jimmy Crystal hanging as a symbol of everything fake and cruel and the doctor lying on the ground. When everyone leaves, Samson arrives, walks slowly and looks at the fallen doctor. Speaks to him, thanks him. Something changed in his mind. The experiment worked. He's no longer just a beast. Dr. Ian dies there in silence, knowing he at least pulled one life out of the dark. Samson gently lifts his body and carries it away like the most precious thing left. Meanwhile, Jimmy Crystal, still alive, nailed to the cross of his lies cries until Samson returns and ends him. Later, we see Jim in a poor, broken house. He's with Sam talking about philosophy, helping with studying for the next day's test. History, ideas, what it means to be human, they talk. Suddenly, Sam hears a noise. They look outside and see Spike and Kelly running, infected, chasing them. Without thinking, Jim and Sam run out to help. And just like that, running scared with hope in between. This story ends with those people who lost everything, but still choose to remain human. If you like this mystery, then hit the like button. Subscribe to Mystery Vault and turn on notifications. And for movie mysteries. See you in the next one.